Alright, so now let's talk about clay consistencies. Clay comes in a lot of different forms for a lot of different needs. I'm just going to start right out with my favorite, which is porcelain type clays. Like I said, true porcelain's a high fire clay, but there are porcelains that are formulated for the 5-6 range, which is what I use. And what I like about porcelain is that it's got very, very fine particulates, which means that it can be sculpted very delicately and with a lot of detail. That can be difficult because it's also hard to control the plasticity of the clay, or like how malleable it is. They can get kind of floppy. It takes a lot of patience because you have to allow it to dry quite a bit between steps so that it doesn't collapse in on itself. It tends to warp in the kiln, it can crack. A lot of potters don't really like porcelain, but I love it. Another thing I love about porcelain is that the consistency is kind of similar to polymer clay, and I've done a lot of work with polymer clay before, so I feel like that gave me an advantage when I first tried out porcelain because it feels very similar to sculpt. Then we move on to stoneware, and basically that just means any other clay body. And it's got a little bit coarser particulates. It still feels smooth when you rub it between your fingers, maybe just a tiny bit gritty. It's a good all-purpose clay for beginners. It's a good place to start if you want to make dishes, that kind of thing. You can still get a fair amount of detail, but it doesn't have quite the translucency or delicacy of porcelain. If you want to make bigger pieces, I recommend getting stoneware with grog. And what that means basically is there's crushed up pre-fired clay, and that just helps to stabilize the clay body so that you can build bigger pieces with less chance of warping or cracking, and it's a lot easier to work with when you're building big things. That said, if you want to do something like polish the surface or carve into it, the grog can be really annoying. So I don't usually use clay with grog, but it's an option. And finally, there are other specialty clays out there that you can use, such as paper clay, which is clay that has a lot of cellulose fiber added to it. And that kind of clay is used specifically for big sculptures. And it's pretty stinky to fire because all of that organic material, all of the cellulose fibers need to burn out. So public studios and school studios may have different policies on using that clay. It also tends to be more lightweight when finished because all of that space occupied by those fibers is just air pockets. I'm not sure if that makes it more fragile than normal clay or not, because I actually haven't really used paper clay a whole lot, but it's something worth looking into if you want to make really big stuff. Also, keep in mind that it might not be the best option for functional ware like food vessels, just because it has all those holes in it, and any holes can hold bacteria and water and bad stuff. But like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with paper clay. Just know that it exists. Talk to your local pottery shop about it. Look it up online. Lots of resources. So when you first start out with ceramics, I know that there's often this huge temptation to go dig your own clay. And I get it. How cool would it be to just go to that riverbank that's muddy and take some of that home and make a pot out of it? And I don't want to kill your dreams of making your own clay body from clay that you've dug yourself, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, and I would definitely recommend for beginners to start with commercially available clay. That said, here are some things to know. So clay is a mixture of different minerals. Porcelain is fairly pure, it's mostly kaolin, but other kinds of clay have different percentages of different minerals and things from the earth. And that is what determines the cone it fires to, that's what determines its working characteristics, the color that it's fired to, etc. And a lot of raw clay has a lot of organic material in it, or it has different proportions of ingredients that make it act a little weird. So if you want to try firing clay that you've dug, I would recommend getting some commercially available clay that you know and you trust and building a protective encasement for it. So like a bowl with another bowl that can go on top as a lid. That way, if you fire your piece and the clay that you've dug either turns into a puddle or explodes, you're protecting your kiln. Now, since there are the risks of it turning into a puddle and ruining a kiln shelf, or exploding and hurting other people's work, most public studios won't let you bring in your own clay unless it's like purchased from a certain spot or it's a certain kind of clay. And honestly, I probably wouldn't want to do too many experiments in my own kiln just because it's kind of a risk. So keep that in mind. If this is something you really want to do, there are lots of books on the subject and a lot of people who actually have experience doing that, unlike me. So, hope that cleared that up. Alright class, well I hope you enjoyed that little introduction to clay and how to pick which kind you want. Next class, let's see, we will be talking about the different stages of clay and the different types of firings, which is just important knowledge moving forward so that you can start making some stuff. That's what it's all about, right? Once again, if you enjoyed this and you can afford to send me $1 or $2, here's my digital tip jar. You can send a little bit my way, and as long as I keep making enough to make it worth my time to do these videos, I'll keep sharing them because art should be accessible and I love ceramics and I want to share that passion with you. See you next time. Wait! I forgot something. So I just wanted to show you what form clay comes in and tell you how much it costs. So clay comes in 25-pound bags like this one. And the prices vary depending on the kind of clay. If it's a specialty clay, they're a little more expensive. The porcelain I use is about $18 to $20 per 25-pound bag. Some of the other kinds of clay are way cheaper, from like $8, $15. You can make a lot with one block of clay. It's a pretty affordable medium when you think about just how much you can make and the fact that it's lasting and functional and awesome. So just keep that in mind, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye for real this time.